I hope that in the last few weeks, the everyday experiences that you may not have seen a lot of meaning and purpose to have gained a little bit of clarity in terms of purpose. Life as a classroom is based around this idea that God has a person that he's creating us and helping us become that is more mature, more fully loving, more trusting, more all of these things. And the way that he does this is through teaching, not necessarily by some book curriculum, but life itself. Life itself is the classroom that helps us move in the direction of who God wants us to be. And the Holy Spirit is our primary teacher, tutor, guide, support, strength. And we looked a few weeks ago about this lesson of challenges. We all face challenges, but what do challenges help us become? They help us become strong. We don't have strength developed without resistance of some kind in life. Some of you are going, okay, I'm strong enough. Take away the resistance. Well, God sets the course, and he helps us learn what we need to learn. We looked at conflict, how conflict between people, sometimes people that are closest to us, really helps develop in us a compassion and a humility for other people. Because in conflict, we often want to just win or power up or have nothing to do with them, but instead we learn how to engage in a humble and helpful way with others. Last week, Sam talked about influence and power. When God gives us power, even if it's not like national or worldwide stage power, when we have power over anyone, he's teaching us to serve. That could mean parents to kids, grandparents to children, older children to younger children, boss to employee, people with a little bit more influence in a social dynamic than another. Whenever we have that advantage of influence, he's teaching us to serve other people with it and not just serve ourselves at their expense. And we come to the last one today of the four, and quite honestly, this is the biggest one in my opinion, and probably the most weighty and profound, and that is the lesson of loss. I was a kid, probably 5, 6 years old, and I remember this distinct, I don't remember anything else about what was going on in life at that time, but I remember this distinct afternoon in the summer where I was standing at our sliding glass door. We had a big sliding glass door. And I was looking outside, and I noticed this bug. You're going to laugh at me when you hear the end of the story. But I noticed this bug, and it was just kind of crawling and flying around and crawling on this little sliding glass door. So I watched it for a minute, and then I just went and smashed it. Why? I don't know. I could have opened the door. I could have let it out, but I smashed it, and there it was on the glass door. And it was a tiny bug. I mean, we're not talking like a praying mantis or something beautiful. It was just a tiny little bug. But I stood there, and then something started to sweep over me as a little 6-year-old kid. And it's like it hit me for the first time. Oh, I just killed something. This bug is now gone. And I had this overwhelming, I told you you're going to laugh at me. I had this overwhelming sadness at the realization that this little being is now dead forever at my hands. And I actually stood there and cried for a minute because it was as if this concept became real to me for the first time. Things die, and then they're dead, and it's lost. And at that moment, I stood there at the glass window crying, and I looked over my shoulder. I'm like, I hope my parents don't come in and ask, honey, what's wrong? Are you okay? Yeah, I just killed a bug. Okay, did it sting you? Did it hurt you? No, but the loss of this life is real, isn't it? And you go, okay, it's a bug. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But that was like the slowest wade into the deep end where loss becomes very real for us. And at 6, I realized it on a bug, but then as we go through life, we have a lot more lessons in this same class of loss. Maybe it's the loss of a dream. Maybe it's the loss of a friend who dies. Maybe it's death of a family member or a close family member or the closest person in the world to you. And then they're gone, and you look through the window and go, oh my gosh. Like, I knew about this, but it just hit. It became very real. I'm not going to ask you to say anything, but I just want to ask by show of hands, who's gone through this lesson before of deep loss? I don't know if you looked around the room, but I did, and that was most of the hands. And if you have, you know, like I do, that how we handle this class really affects our lives. I want to help us this morning. I want to help us, if not hopefully change our perspective on loss, but if not change it, at least expand it. Loss brings us to usually a fork in the road, and we tend to ask this particular question: why? 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 Why did they die? Why did they die? And we go down that road. And when we go down that road, what we tend to do is end up blaming. When we ask why, we tend to go, if the doctor had caught that sooner, gosh, if they had just had healthier habits, if the other driver would have been paying attention, if I wouldn't have treated them so badly, maybe this wouldn't be so painful. And we go down the road of blame, and sometimes we go, God, you're in charge of everything. Why didn't you stop this? You could have stopped this. You could have changed it. You could have brought healing. And I will just tell you right now that when we go down this road of why, we end up often finding blame, and we will never find healing. Which is what we want, is healing. And when we go down this road and we find blame, it's like we get stuck. Instead of asking why, because I'll just share with you, I've never heard a great answer to why when these difficult losses hit. God is essentially a mystery. I mean, we can know him, but we can't fully understand him. The essence of God is he's a mystery. We'll never get all our questions answered about God. And God created us, and he created life. And life, at its root, we can experience it, but we can't fully explain it. We can't fully understand it. And similarly, death. I mean, we could describe what happened, but to really know the why, instead we can ask this question: what now? What now? This is what happened. What now? And this is what loss, or this is perhaps what God is teaching us in the midst of loss. I don't want you to misunderstand me and think God is plucking your loved ones and pulling them into the heavenly choir because he needs a tenor, and then you just have to deal with it so he can teach you a lesson. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, in the middle of this experience, God is still giving us an incredible opportunity by asking what now, and what he wants us to do in the what now is this: thank. If you have a piece of paper, write this down, because this becomes important when you're in the classroom and the test hits. Hey guys, this is a pop quiz for a lot of us. We don't know when the test hits. I thought they were fine and now they're gone. It's a pop quiz. Well, how am I going to respond? Thankfulness, trust, and hope. 2 Samuel 12, looking at the life of King David, is a painful loss from his life. A painful loss. And it's one of those tragic irony losses, because he didn't lose his father or mother, he lost his son. If you've ever lost a child, you could probably agree with some of those who have written about this, that losing a child just seems so wrong on so many levels. Death is hard, but it's like the reverse order. So here's what happened. David has a son, and he knows this son is about to die. His son is very ill, and so he fasts for 7 days, and he prays, and he just begs God. He's not changing, he's not showering, he's not eating, he's not drinking, he's not doing anything for this 7-day period. And all of his royal attendants are trying to get him up, like at least eat something so you have the strength to mourn or pray or petition God or whatever. He is just shut the door, turn off the lights, sobbing and weeping and praying to God. So after 7 days, everybody's concerned about not only his son's health, but they're concerned about their king now, who seems to be losing it. But then on the end of the seventh day, his son dies. And David stands up, puts on a fresh set of clothes, takes a shower, goes to eat, and everybody around him is like, what's going on? We thought you'd totally lose it when he actually died because you were so crazy fasting and weeping when he was alive. And here we pick up on the story, 2 Samuel 12, 21 through 23. David's attendants asked him, why are you acting this way? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept, but now that the child is dead, you get up and eat? He answered, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows? The Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he's dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back again? Listen to this. Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. This is such a profound statement. I will go to him, but I can't bring him back to me. David is a great character in his narratives because we also get his private journals and his songs and his poetry and his emotive, more artistic side. We don't just get the story of David's life. We get it in his own words, and we get to hear some of the emotional ups and downs that he went through as a human being who loved God and was revered as one of the most God-loving people in his era. And one of those emotional ups and downs that he's experienced, I want to capture in Psalm 6. This is the emotion of grief, where he is calling out to God. And if you match that with moments like him losing his son, this puts it into perspective. This brings some color to the situation. I'm going to ask you to participate with me on occasion as I read some of Psalm 6 through 9. I am worn out from sobbing. All night I flood my bed with weeping. Let's repeat. I want you to repeat these words after me. Sobbing. Weeping. Drenching it with my tears. My vision is blurred by grief. My eyes are worn out because of my enemies. Go away, all who do evil. The Lord has heard my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord will answer my prayer. Say with me, tears. Grief. Worn out. This is a picture of a man who is absolutely at the end of his rope with emotion. But what is he doing? The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord has heard my prayer. The Lord has heard me crying out. I want to read a bit of Psalm 9 because it gives us, in the middle of this emotion, it gives us another perspective. He says, those who know your name, God, trust in you. For you, O Lord, do not abandon those who search for you. But the needy will not be ignored forever. The hopes of the poor will not always be crushed. Say this with me. Trust. Do not abandon. Will not be ignored. The hopes of the poor. There's a different tone in the middle of this that is just emerging from his own experience and his own deep grief. Here's what I'd like to do for just a moment. I'd like to ask you to think about the most significant experience you've had with loss. We're not going to share any of this. I just would like to imagine you, ask you to imagine it, picture it. In that very experience, what God is inviting you to do is to be thankful. It's interesting that when we talk about this kind of thing, all we see is what we are losing. And it's so difficult to experience all that we've gained. Gosh, my loved one died. That's true. But we could also just at the very same moment say, God, thank you for giving me 40 years with this person I loved. What an amazing blessing. God, they're too young. I expected more. As if I deserved some sort of standard average. God, thank you for this incredible gift you gave to the world, this person's life. Shorter than I thought, but you knew from the beginning all our days are numbered. Thankfulness for the incredible blessing that he's given us, even in the midst of not having that blessing anymore. That's just a choice. Trust. God, I trust you. I trust you. I'm totally out of control. And what do we do when we're out of control? We try to control. I'm out of control. I don't like this feeling. What can I control? Let me just control something else that has nothing to do with this. So I can feel like I'm in control. And when we lose, this is an opportunity for God to go, trust me because they're not out of my sight. They're not out of my sight. If you go out on a field in Indiana that is really just no trees, no forest for a long time, and you look, you can see a good distance into the horizon. How many miles do you think you can see? Depending on where you're at, you might be able to see half a mile, a couple miles, and then it just drops off. You cannot see what's 10 miles down the road. You don't have that line of sight. But if your loved one walks down that road and you see them get smaller and smaller and then they drop out of sight, there is nothing in you that would say, they're gone. What you would say is, they're now out of my sight. But I believe that the world is a lot bigger than that. And they're still on the road. And if I run, I'll catch up to them. Just because I can't see them, I still trust. Friends, we have an incredible hope and promise through the resurrection of Jesus. Like, death, it's part of the journey. We don't know when it's coming. Loss, it's going to happen. Fearing it just brings it backwards into the present moment when it's not even here yet. But we have a victory over these things. We have the hope of Jesus that death is not a final note in the story. Death is not the last chapter. Death is a transition point. It's where the person we love, or us ourselves, we drop over the horizon, but we dare not think we fell off the side of the world. The world isn't like that. I just can't see them. But I have hope that God is still with, he still knows. They're not gone. That is trust. And no matter your temperament, personality, background, conditioning, experience, you have a choice to trust God with that moment. And then also hope. When that person, when that loss, when that experience, like David, I can't bring them back. I'll go there, but they won't come here anymore. When that starts to stack up on the other side of life, like, hey, there's a lot more people in heaven now that I know than I used to. That ever dawn on you? Like, wow, when I get to heaven, I'll know a lot of people. And then there becomes a time in certain people's lives, if they get to live to be this old, where it's almost like the draw of all their loved ones on the other side is almost as strong or stronger than the draw of this life. That hope grows and strengthens. That hope in what God has for us ahead, knowing this is not the end. If you could imagine talking to a young tree. Picture yourself going out in the forest, and there's a sapling, maybe as tall as you. It's a young tree. And you see this tree, and it's around all kinds of other trees in the forest, mature trees. If Thomas can hear me, I'm going to ask him to come up, because we're going to close in prayer in just a minute while I talk about this tree. If you can imagine going to this tree, and you see it just budding in the spring with potential, all this hope, soaking up the rays of the sun, and you see it, and you look around the forest, and you see some really mature trees, and you see some seeds that are just beginning to sprout, and you also see some downed wood and some trees that are gone. And you want to coach this tree because it's so youthfully optimistic, and you want to tell it, you're in a great time of life. You're going to bud and sprout, and this is wonderful. And as you grow, your trunk will get stronger. And as you grow, you will experience all kind of wonderful things. You'll get taller. And then there'll be summers and there'll be falls. And when fall comes, your hair will sort of change color. Some of it will fall out. And your influence is going to extend, and you may have some little trees that you've helped grow nearby you. And then eventually there's going to become a winter where your limbs are going to start feeling a little brittle. And the wind that used to be pretty flexible is going to feel like it may just push you right out. And then the cold is going to hit, and you're going to maybe start losing some of those limbs. And then there'll come a time when you're no longer upright. You're down with the other trees. And young tree, this is the beautiful process of the seasons of life that God has planted you in. Enjoy them all. Don't be afraid of any of them. I'd like to invite you to join me in a closing prayer. I get the honor of sometimes being involved in these moments with some of the people in our church where the loss happens, or the death happens, or the funeral happens, or the discussion afterwards happens. And it's not stuff you'd always broadcast, but sometimes we get stuck in the grief for a long, long time. And even if life seems to move on at the same pace, inside we didn't, and that loss is still very, very felt. So I've been thinking this week, I've been praying, God, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do as a community to help us not get stuck? I'd invite you to stand with me for just a moment as we close in this prayer. And just don't move, but just look around the room. You got all kinds of people. When I asked you to raise your hand, almost everybody raised their hand. I've been through this lesson. I've learned some things. I've hurt as well. And right now we're in a community of people who, some of us have the weather marks of the older trees. Some of us are still hurting inside deeply, deeply, deeply from the loss of others. Some of us are anticipating with fear. Man, winter's coming. I can feel the cold. I'm pretty scared. What I want to do this morning is to give you an opportunity to choose the focus, to choose the perspective of trust, to choose the perspective of faith, to choose the perspective of gratitude, to choose today to say, God, you know what? I trust in you. I hope in you. I know I'm not in control, but I'm going to go through this blooming every single moment you give me, and thankful and aware of every single gift you've given. So I'm going to ask you to do a couple things as we close in prayer. I'll speak some things out loud. If at any point you want to walk up and just stand here or kneel here at the altar, the stairs, do that, and somebody will probably come up and pray with you. But I just want to invite you to do this. Take your hands like this. Close your fists tight. And feel the feeling that you feel when you do this. Now I want you to take your fists back like this and put your shoulder in the way. Hold it back. Do you feel what this does to us? This is the way we live a lot. I've got this gift and I am not letting it go. I've got this person, I am not get away, you can't have it. And some of us, even though we've lost, we're still doing this. Even to God. What I want to invite you to do this morning is do this with me. This is so different. This is so different. This says, God, my hands are open. God, my hands are not holding and clinging to the gifts as if I am in charge. Thank you for these gifts. Thank you for these memories. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the person. Thank you for the opportunities. Thank you for the joy. I receive it, but I don't cling to it because I didn't create it anyway. If you've been clinging, hold your hands out like this and just whisper, God, it's yours. They're yours. I'm yours. This is all yours. I don't cling. I'm not grasping with my fists. I'm thankful. I'm hurting, but I'm thankful. God, and I'm also not clasping at what yesterday brought because I can't receive what you give today. I don't have open hands. I can't receive the gifts of today. I've been stuck in the past. If you need to receive the gifts of today, open your hands and just say, God, I'm here. I don't know what you have for me, but I'm alive. I don't know what is tomorrow will hold, but today you have good things for me. Please give them to me. I'm not clinging to what I have to have. I'm not in charge. I receive them. I trust in you. I trust in you. If you want to repeat after me, repeat after me. I trust in you. I trust in you. You're so important to him. You're so important to him. Trust in him. He loves you. He's got good things for you. As we finish today, you're invited again to the gym for some connection time. There's also some snacks there. If you'd like to participate, just hang a left out of the room. I also want to invite you back next week. We have a special interaction with a guest talking about the effect of personality on the spiritual life. We're all really different and kind of quirky in our own ways, and we know that. So we're going to kind of unpack what it means to be your kind of personality, but in relationship with God and other people. So I hope you can come bring friends. We love welcoming new people. We love encouraging other people's walks. May the love of God, the peace of Jesus, and the fellowship of the Spirit be with you as you go. You are sent.